Welcome, or maybe I should say welcome back to Look Both Ways with David and Wes, pragmatic conversations about all things transportation. It's been a minute. It's great to be back with all of you. My name is David Zipper. I am a senior fellow at the MIT Mobility Initiative and a frequent writer on transportation topics. And I am joined by
Wes Marshall, professor of civil engineering, University of Colorado, Denver, and hopefully we are back in better than ever.
I mean, we're back. I'll let the listeners decide or viewers decide if it's better than ever. But this is we like to have these episodes come out every couple weeks. We've been doing a good job with it, but we fell a little bit short this time. But we had excuses. Both Wes and I were in different continents, and the time zones were a royal pain. So that is why it took a little bit longer than usual, and we're actually not making this a live episode, although the next one will be, just because it's been a bit tricky. So, Wes, I'll start with you. You were in Kansas, and I think someplace even more exotic than that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Kansas was second on the list, so I started in Australia. So I got to spend a couple days in Sydney to get myself used to the time zone. It was interesting to see because I was in Sydney for my sabbatical in 2017. So to be able to spend a couple days there and see some friends was fun. And then I flew across the country to Perth and spent about 4 days over there. And then came home. I will say that last bit, my Perth to Denver trip, I set my stopwatch when I left my hotel. 32 hours later, I walked in my door at my house in Denver. So that was a long trip. So I got to do a lot of reading and a lot of watching of movies, things like that.
That's good. That's good. Well, I mean, in all seriousness, when I arrive after a trip like that, if I can't go to sleep right away, or I shouldn't, I often just try to go for a really long walk or bike ride to just get the sunlight in. I don't know if you do something like that.
No, I will say going to Australia is a lot easier time zone wise. Like you feel okay, just feel like you had a long night, and you get there and you're okay. Coming back, it flips you over. It's much tougher. This time, like I did, my keynote on Tuesday, and Tuesday was a really busy day. I ended up going like late into the night. The next day, I was pretty exhausted. So when it hit like 5 p.m. that night, I actually took a nap from like 5 to 11 p.m. and then stayed up all night. So I got myself back on Denver time just because I was so exhausted. So on the plane, I was sleeping when nobody else was and vice versa. So when I got back, I was better than usual for sure.
That's fair. I mean, I've never been to Australia, so my impression of transportation in Australia is basically those sort of like viral pictures that you see online of basically kangaroo crossing. So I just imagine kangaroos everywhere in Perth and Sydney in the outback. That's just a country full of kangaroos on streets. Is that accurate?
No, you definitely have to leave this. Actually, when we were there last time in Canberra, in the capital, we that's where we first saw like the wild kangaroos, like literally in an office park. In a parking lot. My wife somehow found it was like a National Geographic website that suggested going to this office park, and they were totally right. We saw wild kangaroos out there in the middle of it. But in Sydney and Perth, you don't see that sort of stuff. I mean, you get outside of the city and you really are squinting. You can see some koalas up in the trees, but Sydney is a major city with it was interesting to see the changes. Like the biggest changes I noticed was, even though the transit was really good in 2017, they've increased it so much more now. They have a streetcar, they have like a new metro train, which it's hard to even distinguish between the old trains, but it's faster, it loads quicker. I believe it's autonomously driven. And like literally, even though sometimes it parallels the existing train lines, people will wait like 4 more minutes for the new faster train to get on it. So that was cool to see.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
How about you? You went to some places.
I did go to some places. I gave a couple keynotes at the Mobi Summit in Portugal and at the Smart City Expo in Barcelona. So I was in Europe for like 2 solid weeks. I went to the Czech Republic in between just because it's totally rational to go from Portugal to the Czech Republic and then to Barcelona. That makes a lot of sense. But that's what I did. And have you been to Barcelona, actually? Have you ever been?
I have not, no.
I mean, it's sort of famous, right, for the super blocks in urbanist circles and things like that.
Yeah, very much so.
I thought I would not like it because I hear so much about over tourism and how it's just overrun with people from all over the place. And I was completely wrong. I absolutely loved Barcelona. The food is great. I was really lucky to have a urban planning professor friend give me a bike ride tour of the super blocks, and there are like just swarms and swarms of tourists. But it's interesting. I was also in Porto, Portugal, for a couple of days. I don't know if you've been there, which is another sort of like over tourism mecca. And there it really was unbearable because Porto is a smaller city and the tourists just were inescapable for me, at least. Like I kind of was going crazy by the end of my couple days there. But I guess Barcelona is just such a big city. I think I didn't realize just how it's like the second largest city in Spain. It's massive. And if you go outside of like, a couple of small areas of the city, you're basically with Catalans. And I had a blast. And so I learned something about what over tourism is and how to escape it some ways, but which means basically just go to a bigger city. But the other thing too is something. Have you ever heard of this? This was fascinating to me. In Barcelona, they have an amazing bike share system, like the biking capital of Spain, maybe the biking capital of the Mediterranean. But the bike share system is only open for locals. You and I cannot, for at any price, access the bike share system. Have you ever seen a city like that?
I don't think so.
I haven't either. And I've been asking like bike share nerds, and they haven't either. And the reason is the Catalan government has decided that this system really needs to be for locals. And if you're a tourist, whatever, go pay extra to ride one of the private bike share companies at any price. They just don't want it for you. You'll mess up the operations, they say.
So they have competing bike share systems alongside that one. That's the way they
run it. I don't think that's that rare. Like we have in DC where I live, we have Lime bikes next to Capital Bike Share. But in Barcelona, there is a fantastic docked system that's all over that literally tourists are told not for you. I've just never seen that before. Never.
Yeah, because the first iterations of the bike share, they were usually the dock systems, and they were usually just a single system for those cities. Like Denver was, I think, the first one, the first bigger one. I think you guys in DC had a smaller one for a little bit. But we got ours right after the DNC in 2008. Like, so that was part of their.
I thought DC was before Denver. We may have to have a bit of a fight over this.
DC had a smaller, like mini, it wasn't sort of citywide. I think Denver was known as sort of the first legit bike share service.
You sure about that?
We got the B cycle. I think it was 2009 or 10. DC definitely had one, but it was your limited one. It wasn't the full rollout.
I don't know. I feel like Gabe Klein, who was the head of DDOT at that time, might have strong words about who came first. I was actually talking to him earlier this week, and he was saying that they really modeled DC's system off of Montreal and Paris. He didn't even mention Denver. So I don't know. I'm just going to throw him under the bus here and say that he would.
Well, I think it depends what you define. Like the first dock system, you could probably say it was DC, but I think it was like 3 docks, like 3 stations. That's it.
Okay, it's interesting. A group, I have to go. We'll look this up. Maybe we'll put in the show notes once we resolve this, because I know DC Capital Bike Share grew fast, and Gabe and his team take a lot of pride in sort of being like the first. They claim the first big city bike share system in the U.S. But they made a lot of money off of visitors and tourists, as most U.S. systems do. And I just find it really interesting that Barcelona doesn't. Yeah. So anyway, that was my one of my little mobility observations from my tour. But I'm now stateside for a while. Are you going to be in the U.S. for a bit?
I am. I actually don't have to go anywhere for the next couple of weeks at least. So
incredible!
Yeah,
wow,
it feels nice.
Who's heard of that before? It's amazing. Well, that's great. Well, it's great to be back with you and with everybody else, as I said. So let's dive back in. There's some news. Should we do word on the street?
Let's do it.
All right. So today, Wes and I would like to a little bit return to a topic we mentioned before, but I think we're going to go a little deeper into it now. There was a big election earlier in November. It was very good for Democrats across the board, but for transportation and mobility, some major news came out of New York City where Zoran Mamdani won the election to be the next mayor of New York at age 34. And Mamdani he's been in Albany as a state legislator for a while. He is someone who cares deeply about transportation, has long cared about it, and has had very creative ideas. He ran his campaign in large part on the idea for transportation of having the bus in New York be fast and free, meaning no one would have to pay for the bus at all, and it would go quickly, supposedly partly because it's free, but also because he would create more bus rapid transit lanes and things like that. Now, we talked about that before. I know Wes and I are both skeptics of the fare free move in New York. Some quick context, though, it already looks like that fare free move that Mamdani wants to do, it may be dead on arrival. It would cost upwards of $800 million a year, and Governor Hochul's already said not interested. But there's a lot of other stuff that Mamdani has talked about for transportation that's really interesting. And I just want to mention this briefly. He's talked about building, obviously, a lot more bus rapid transit routes. He's talked about bringing back year-round outdoor dining and removing parking spots to do it in New York City. He's talked about creating Sunday and holiday pedestrianization programs that would be inspired by Bogota and Mexico City. He's talked about creating school zones throughout the whole city so that vehicles would be banned from being in front of any school citywide. And he's talked about intensively pedestrianizing the congestion pricing zone. So there's a lot on his agenda here, and it's pretty exciting stuff to me, with the exception of the fare-free bus thing, which I don't support. But I will say, and I know there's a lot of people who are angling for this role, the New York City DOT commissioner position is, to me, going to be the most exciting job in American transportation for the next couple of years. Whoever gets that, and we'll see. But I'm curious if you have thoughts at this point, Wes, about what you'll be looking at in New York as Mamdani takes the reins, specifically regarding transportation.
I mean, so that last point you made is interesting too. Like that position is going to be very interesting. You are totally right about that. And I will say, last time around we talked about the fare free transit, I tried to make a case for it.
Didn't try very hard, as I remember. Or maybe I just steamrolled you because I get angry about it.
I wouldn't even say it's even now. It's not. I wouldn't even say it's dead on arrival. One of the books I read on my long plane ride was, it's called The Shoup Doctrine. It's basically a collection of essays that, what was his name? Daniel Baldwin Hess put out. He's one of Donald Shoup's former students. Mm-hmm. That kind of put together Donald Shoup's thinking in a book. But the first essay.
So just real quick, Donald Shoup is the author of the High Cost of Free Parking.
Yes,
great UCLA urban planning professor. So I just want to make sure people know. He
died earlier this year, so he helped start to put together this book, and I guess before it came out, he passed away. So it's supposed to be a collection of his thinking. But I remember reading in his first. So Donald Shoup wrote the first chapter, and that first chapter is almost magical. Like you kind of feel so much of his like personality and stuff coming through that chapter. But he talked about how much of the parking in New York City the curb parking is not priced whatsoever. Right. I think he said something like 97% of curb parking in Manhattan or New York City. Maybe it's New York City.
I think it's New York City, but yeah, I know where you're going. Yeah.
Are free. So, I mean, he put together some numbers saying like if you priced it, even way below market price, you'd have more than enough to make transit free. If you put that money into like a parking benefits district and made transit free, you could easily do that. And if you, priced it at market rates, you'd have, billions and billions, like $6 billion a year, I think was the number he laid out there, which would more than cover what we're talking about. So, I mean, like we're getting into a whole nother political hornet's nest in terms of trying to get parking priced. But, part of the reason for it is like, I think there's one study he mentioned where if we count the curb spaces, a lot of them are 100% full. So you have that problem with people cruising for parking and that sort of stuff. So there is rationale for charging for it and kind of putting the money back in. So I don't know, like even if the governor won't pay for it, there are other ways to do it.
Yeah, and the thing is, money is fungible, Wes. If you can somehow create $6 billion for the city, I don't know why you would immediately say, okay, and that's going to go toward fare free transit when you could instead use that money to simply provide a lot more bus service. You could use it to upgrade the signals on the subway, which would be extremely, extremely helpful. You could do it to do all kinds of road diets and BRT installations. I mean, there's just so many things you could spend the money on that seem to me to be more valuable by far than just sort of in a blanket way providing fare free transit, particularly because there's ways of providing free bus service to low income New Yorkers that doesn't cost nearly as much. That's something actually that I thought was interesting. The Regional Plan Association, sort of a good governance group in New York City, has been sort of encouraging Mamdani and progressives who support him to look at ways of helping low-income New Yorkers obtain the sort of I can't remember if it's very reduced or if it's absolutely free transit for low-income riders, because there's ways of doing that, and I think they should do it, and I think it's the right thing to do. I think that at least in the short term, getting $6 billion out of parking is not going to happen anytime very soon. That's an enormous lift, as you well know. Really, to do fare-free transit, Mamdani would need the state to kick in a big chunk of money, and Hochul's made very clear that's not her priority. I just don't think this is going anywhere.
Well, as far as I knew, though, wasn't on his list of priorities. Like, he had faster bus service via more bus only lanes via signal priority. I think he talked about freezing subway fares and running more subway service. So there was stuff. I mean, I'm not.
Oh yeah, no, let me be very clear. I contain multitudes when it comes to Mamdani views. I think fare free transit is a bad idea, but I think that he has many excellent ideas for transportation.
But that is his signature pledge, to be fair, right? That's his big one. So, and you wholeheartly disagree with his big one.
I do. I think it's performative. I think it sounds really good, but I don't think it's actually the way to improve people's lives. There's a lot of ways to do it to do it more effectively. And also, I think that when you remove a very important source of revenue for a major system like New York or Boston, you make the overall transit system more vulnerable if and when revenues were to decline in the future. Because let's say Republicans take over control in Albany at some point, you're just introducing fragility to the system unnecessarily, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, what I've heard him talk about it, though, he speaks about, the amount of money we're talking about to make the buses free is a drop in the bucket in comparison to New York City's overall budget. So when he spoke about it in that way, I didn't feel like he was looking for money from the state. He was trying to do this locally. Is that not right?
No, he's been, in my understanding, and I'm sure we'll get lots of emails if I get this wrong. My understanding is that the plans for this have really relied on, at the very least, matched funding from the state, because, it's easy to say, oh, it's only 0.8% of the city budget. Well, yeah, you go out and try to generate $600-800 million a year by cutting programs, even in a huge city like New York. It's not easy to do. I think that that's sort of like a rhetorical line that is sort of divorced from actual policymaking. The thing is, what is it? You campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. So It was a great line while Mamdani was running. It captured imaginations. It's not good policy, in my view. And Mamdani is extremely smart. I should be really clear. I met him and spoke to him when I was writing a story about using automatic cameras to protect bike lanes, and I was blown away. I'm not a huge fan of the DSA, and I don't consider myself on the far left at all. But I left our conversation, mine with him, thinking that was the most articulate, thoughtful, young politician I think I've ever met. So I actually am optimistic he's going to find a path forward here. But I think there's a lot of other things in his transportation agenda to be excited about before you get to the one that everyone knows about, bluntly, fare-free transit.
Yeah, but to be honest, I would love to see him figure out a way to do it, because I would love to see what happens. Because we can poke holes in the low income. Yes, it's great to give low income riders, but then you have a threshold and people have to meet it. And if they barely don't meet it, then it gets tricky, right? It's not a perfect system. And there's other advantages when you have the fare free transit in terms of not having to charge for the time it takes to get on the bus. You can do both two-door thing. You don't have the issues with the bus drivers getting into conflicts with people that didn't pay. And I would like to see it. And, it's not my job to figure out how to pay for it. I'm curious to see if he can do it.
Well, maybe we'll come back to it for a third time on Word on the Street in the future. We reserve the right to do so.
Yeah, if he can do it, there'll be a lot to talk about. There'll be a lot of interesting stuff to see.
I think there's gonna be a lot to talk about either way. We've even talked about how whatever, I mean, like, because, Eric Adams has been in cahoots with the Trump administration, Trump has really laid off going after New York the way he's gone after LA and DC and Chicago. With Mamdani there, it's going to be open season, and anybody doing anything creative around transportation in New York has got to be expecting Sean Duffy and his lackeys at USCOT to try to get in the way. So there's going to be a lot more drama to come, regardless of fare free transit. But let's leave it here for now. I'm sure we'll come back. But it is going to be really something worth watching because, and like I said, I think that whoever gets the commissioner role at NYC DOT has what I think is the most fascinating job in transportation for the next year or two.
Are you in the running for that?
No, I'm not. Are you?
No.
I think for lots of reasons, including the fact that I've been bashing the fare free transit idea, I don't think Mamdani is going to have me on the long list, let alone the short list. Let's go to roundabout.
All right.
Wes, you have a topic you'd like to discuss.
I do. So it's the 40th anniversary of one of my favorite movies, Back to the Future. And because of that anniversary, it's actually back in theaters now. So I have it on my mind. I actually have it on my shirt today.
DeLorean, look at that. Wow.
My son and I went to see it on one of those big Dolby screens last week. So I guess bear with me a minute here, because just in case we have listeners and looking at our geography of our listeners, they are from a lot of places. There is a chance that somebody might not have seen the movie. So I feel like I should do like a 30-second overview of where I'm going with this.
The floor is yours.
All right. So the original movie, Back to the Future 1, it starts off in 1985. And we have a high school kid named Marty McFly, that's played by Michael J. Fox, who, for some weird reason, is always hanging out with this older mad scientist character named Doc Brown. Doc Brown tells Marty to meet him in a parking lot of the Twin Pine Malls at 1 a.m., which, again, is super weird for him to have this plan with a high school kid, and it's not even like their grandfather, grandson, like Rick and Morty would be. But still
sketchy. It sounds kind of sketchy, honestly. I'm not going to lie to you, but go on.
Yeah, when you talk through some of the stuff, there is some weird stuff in Back to the Future. Anyways, Marty grabs a skateboard. He heads over to the mall. And when he gets there, Doc tells Marty that he's successfully invented time travel. And he placed this time travel machine in a DeLorean, which is this stainless steel sports car with these, the gull-wing doors. And in order to make the DeLorean travel through time, it needs to get up to 88 miles per hour. So long story short, some terrorists show up in this VW van because Doc Brown stole their plutonium, and they want to get the plutonium back. The terrorists are shooting up the mall parking lot. Marty jumps in the DeLorean, tries to get away. And right when the terrorists pull out a bazooka, Marty, says, let's see if you bastards can do 90. And he proceeds to travel back in time 30 years to 1955. 1955 is filled with shenanigans that might disrupt the space-time continuum. But spoiler alert, the movie ends with Marty getting himself and the DeLorean back to 1985. So when they get there, Doc pretty much immediately jumps into DeLorean, and he's going to head 30 years into the future from there. So that would be 2015. So we don't see 2015 in that original movie, but the last scene has Doc coming back from 2015 to 1985 to tell Marty and to tell Marty's girlfriend that they need to come back to 2015 with them because there's a problem with their future kids. It's always weird to me here why Doc is in such a rush to get them back to the future, given that they have a time machine and you think they'd have all the time in the world. But I guess irregardless of my logic, Doc he puts some trash into the new Mr. Fusion thing. Like the DeLorean no longer needs plutonium. You can put some trash and like a beer into it. And they all jump in. Marty says something about them needing to back the car up in order to get enough road to get up to 88 miles per hour, which that again is weird because, 2 minutes before Doc did that same thing from the same spot and went into the future. And then Doc says like roads, like where we're going we don't need roads. And the old stainless steel DeLorean turns into a flying car.
This is where we're going. I was like, where are we going with this?
And this flies right towards us into the future. So, given that we are now already 10 years past 2015,
where's our flying cars?
Yeah, because there's a large contingent of people that are wondering where the heck they are. And a lot of them are saying they're going to fix all our transportation woes. So let's start there.
So where are the flying cars? That's your question? You were promised flying cars when you were whatever it was, 10 years old or something. And you want to ask on the podcast, where's your damn flying cars?
I guess why don't we have them? But I think part of it too is, do we even want them?
Honestly, I think you could have asked that question without the 5-minute overview of the movie, but I get it. Like, I do this whenever I start talking about The Karate Kid, my favorite movie of the 80s, when I just won't shut up. So I respect it.
It's a good movie.
As a quick aside, not only is it a good movie, Ralph Macchio, the star of The Karate Kid, was offered famously the role of Marty McFly in Back to the Future and turned it down. You know that?
I did. And actually, Eric Stoltz was given the role of Marty McFly, and they had to fire him 6 weeks into the movie. And,
is that right? I didn't know.
Yeah, because they couldn't get Michael J. Fox because he was in the middle of doing Family Ties. He was also filming Teen Wolf too. So he was super busy. So when they agreed to let him do it, I don't think he slept for the remaining of the filming of it, because he did Family Ties during the day and then he did Back to the Future every night. And he would just nap in the car ride between the studios.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've not talking about flying cars at all, really. So
right now there's a lot of startup companies.
Yeah, totally.
You might know the acronym, the VTOL, vertical takeoff.
VTOL, yeah.
And landing vehicles. And when I've been hearing about these when I go to Transportation Research Board type conferences. They're always saying they're coming. And for a while, 2025 was the year I was hearing. And, I guess they exist, but they're not here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty scared. I just feel like I'm a Debbie Downer whenever these sorts of futuristic technologies come up. There's a few I'm excited about, like e-bikes and cargo bikes and whatnot, but a lot of this stuff like AVs and eVTOL or whatever, I'm very dubious about. I mean, the technology is advancing. Supposedly it's going to be quiet and totally safe. Although, it doesn't seem that quiet. There are all these reporters who basically say, we've been told it's silent, but here I can barely talk to the founder of the startup as the machine is operating because it's so noisy. And hard for me to, I think here's a couple things I think about. Number one, for those who live in big cities, how much do you or your friends enjoy having helicopters flying overhead? I know few things that are more despised by urban residents than helicopters flying overhead, largely because of the noise, partly because of the safety issues. And I just don't know that eVTOLs are going to be able to overcome that initial hatred. And then I also think about the sort of the impact on the transportation network overall. Right now we're recording this during the COP climate conference in Brazil. My wife works on climate. She's in Brazil for that conference. And she was in Sao Paulo just a couple of days ago. And she was telling me so many of the buildings have helicopter pads on the roof, because if you have a lot of money, you don't want to deal with the congestion is so bad in Sao Paulo and transit's not good enough. So people just fly their helicopter when they don't want to deal with traffic. That's what I think is going to happen with VTOL. You're going to have a service for the elite that's expensive and sort of erodes support for improving the road transportation network and building transit, because the wealthiest will be able to just sort of check out. And frankly, it's going to also, I think, hasten sprawl, because it sort of enhances the value of places that are further away, because you don't have to be stuck in traffic. You can just sort of hop in your flying car and get to wherever you want to go without worrying about it. So I just think from a societal perspective, I'm why do we need this? How is this helpful? But I know there's money to be made potentially. So I guess that's why we're still hearing about it. But I'm not very excited about the whole field.
Yeah, when I was in Sydney, I went to one of my friend's houses, and I had forgotten that he lives very close to the Sydney airport. So we were having some beers in his backyard, and literally every 2 to 3 minutes, you had to just you couldn't talk for like 30 seconds while a plane flew like
Right.
right over our heads. It was crazy. And I think when I read about like the VTOLs and how or eVTOLs, if they're going to be electric or even autonomous, like they say they're going to fix congestion. It's like another carrot dangling ahead of us is going to fix all these problems. But a couple things here. Like if you do watch Back to the Future 2 and you see them jump into 2015.
Thanks for bringing us back to on point here. Get away from me, VTOLs. Back to what we're really talking about here, which is Back to the Future. Sorry, Wes.
No, they end up in traffic. Like they're sitting in traffic in the flying car. And actually, during COVID, I talked my kids into watching The Jetsons. If you're old enough, you might remember that show. And that's a show that I think took place. It came on TV in 1962, and they were looking 100 years in the future. So I guess 2062. And it's weird to think we're closer to 2062 than 1962. But either way, in the first episode, George Jetson gets into his flying car and goes off to work, and he's sitting in traffic the entire time. Like that is the crux of the plot, that he's sitting in traffic in his flying car. So it's one thing if you're talking about the sort of system that your wife is experiencing in Brazil where it's just the elite. But if they ever see this as a possibility to actually work in cities, it just doesn't make any sense. You'd have, hundreds and thousands of flying cars overhead. And to think that would be safe seems insane to me.
Yeah, I'm not really excited about it either.
So let me just take one again. I'll go back to the Back to the Future, and I will say, when I was 9 years old, when I watched this for the first time, like my takeaway wasn't DeLoreans are cool. Like my transportation takeaway from that movie was that skateboards are cool, because there's a really awesome skateboard scene, and Marty is skateboarding around a lot, holding onto the back of cars. When I left that theater, I wanted to go learn how to skateboard. Like jumping in a DeLorean wasn't it. So like to me, like that could be the takeaway too. Like that, and even Marty, he's like pining over that like black pickup truck. Even though he's like the coolest guy in town, the way he's skateboarding around.
Hey, skateboards are micromobility. That's what I say.
Yeah, we need more of that.
So I'm going to see if I can get you to go along with something here. We talked before we started this recording about trying to keep our sessions like tight and trying to shorten them, which we are absolutely not doing. So I may actually table my roundabout topic for the next recording, which is not going to be very long, because I want to make sure we bring in a couple mailbag questions. Are you okay with that?
Hey, you're in charge today, so I'll let you do what you want there.
All right, then I make the executive decision. We're going to go straight to mailbag, because we've gotten a whole bunch of questions, which we love, through our email account, which is lookbothwayspod@gmail.com. And I wanted to begin, I think, with Ryan, who says, great pod. David, apple cider this time of year is a really strong choice for rail drinks. I'm disappointed Wes didn't go with a pumpkin ale. Ryan, I'm disappointed too. But his question was, sorry, I just had to get that in there, Wes. But he did actually say this. A few months ago, some politicians were running on a platform of rolling back pedestrian and bike-friendly efforts in cities. I think I remember a city in Texas even ripping out a lot of the improvements that have been put in. But I haven't heard much about it in a while, and I'm wondering what's been happening recently on that front. So I can maybe take a first stab at this. It's a good question. Ryan's sort of asking about the reversal of some of the urbanist moves in various cities. It does feel like we're going through a period where in North America, at least, and to some extent Europe too, that is happening in a few areas. And here in Washington, D.C., where I live, one bike lane in Upper Northwest was removed. Mayor Bowser backpedaled on a previous commitment to install a bike lane on Connecticut Avenue. The city in Texas that I believe Ryan is referring to is Houston, where a sort of centrist / right of center mayor has decided bike lanes are terrible and is removing a whole lot of them with the support of the police. And
spending
I think
a lot of money doing so.
And spent considerable money doing so. It's really bad what's happening in Houston. And then in In Toronto, which I think we've talked about before, Doug Ford, who is the premier of Ontario, is basically forcing the removal of several Toronto bike lanes that he hates. So it does feel like we're going through a period where there's still some bike lanes going in, but I feel like there's been more reversals in major cities than we've seen in a while. And I also found it indicative of potentially that, just because this is hot off the press, but a couple of days ago, it was announced that Mayor Michelle Wu of Boston, who's been an urbanist champion and really pushed bike lanes and transit lanes in Boston, her streets director, Yasha Franklin Hodge, is stepping down right after she won re-election in a landslide, which may suggest, I hope it doesn't, but it might suggest that she is taking her foot off the gas with urbanist improvements. So I do think we're living in a bit of a tough time for this stuff. Wes, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts. I guess first of all, I'm not going to drink a pumpkin ale. So if you see me drinking a pumpkin ale, you can punch me. Feel free to do so.
Noted.
Cider, yeah. And I do believe this might be my good friend Ryan that's just giving me crap about this. I don't know for sure. That's a good chance. I don't think Michelle Wu's backtracking. I feel like what I heard, he's going to do something else. I don't know. We'll see in that
Yasha?
front.
I was just talking to Yasha this week. I don't think he's jumping ship for a particular job, as far as I know.
Yeah, I heard he was he felt like he was done there. I mean, maybe since you talked to him, you might know more, but one of my friends here in Denver knew her pretty well when he was in Boston, and he speaks so highly of like how much she actually really cares about this stuff. So
yeah, she does personally. I think that's right. Or she has. It's been a major issue for her. Sorry, go ahead.
I saw her talk at NACTO, and when that was in Boston, their Designing Cities conference, and she was really great. She did an awesome job with that. In terms of the other ones like Houston or Toronto, like we were both in Toronto, and that was one of the topics of conversation that we heard a lot when we were up there. Like, yes, they are going backwards, but I will say even in cities where, in Denver, I wouldn't say we're going backwards, but it sort of feels like we are in some respects too, because
I thought you had a BRT that was not BRT, a bike lane that was going in that the mayor just pulled away from in Denver, didn't you?
Yeah, I mean,
on like Alameda or something?
I guess maybe we're not going forward as much as we used to. I mean, I think if you came here when NACTO was here and all the green paint on the new bike lanes was fresh and it felt so new, and now a few years later, like the same bike lanes are often there, but it just looks a little bit less fresh and less, so it feels a little bit dingier, and like we need to sustain the funding a little better in the cities that aren't going backwards. I don't know. I think we have to distinguish between the ones like Houston and Toronto that are going backwards versus the cities that maybe just aren't going forwards quite as much as they were before.
Yeah, I think as other issues have risen to the fore in the U.S. and elsewhere too, like democracy's health, like cost of living, sort of pedestrianization and bike lanes has just sort of fallen down the priority list a bit in cities.
And that's what happened in Denver. Like the homeless issue, affordability of housing, other stuff came to the top of the mayor's agenda, and the street stuff was pushed back a little.
Yeah, I would say just really quick and to Ryan, like I think that with the exception of places like Houston, which really are bad, in most cities, it feels like it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like so much progress has been made with space reallocation in streets in a number of American cities that you sort of expect having to at least pause and breathe. But it's not like we're seeing a wholesale reversal outside of a very small number of places. So I don't think there's any reason to panic, but it does feel like we're not living at a time like maybe 2013 or 2014 when it really did feel like every week there was a really exciting new announcement about a city creating a BRT lane or a bike lane. Not really happening in that way right now. Can I do one more question from Mailbag briefly, and then we're going to do Rail Drinks?
Yeah.
This is from Judy, who asked a very concise question. She said she'd like to know our views on speed cameras. She says she's having an ongoing disagreement with a friend who thinks speed cameras are the solution to reducing speeding on our roads. But she, Judy, argues for better street design. Wes, what do you think?
I could argue both sides of this. I mean, so I think the speed cameras, I mean, cameras in general, Well, at least in the United States, they often open up a whole can of worms, and the discussion devolves into either Big Brother's watching us or it's a cash grab by the city, and no one is even talking about safety. If we can get over that hump and keep the conversation on safety, like a camera here and there, like a piecemeal type solution is not going to fix it. It would literally have to be cameras everywhere. And that's one of the things you notice when you go to Australia. Like in Sydney, there are cameras all over the place. I might have even told this story on the pod before where like when I was there in 2017, I jumped in an Uber and this guy was driving safer than any Uber driver I've ever seen. I was like, hey man, like what's going on? He's like, there's cameras everywhere. And if I get one ticket, whether it's a speeding camera or a red light camera, I lose money for the week because those tickets are real tickets that put points on your license.
Yeah.
They're like a $500 ticket. So when you go there, like everyone sort of follows the rules in a much different way than they do so here. At least in Denver, we have a handful of red light cameras. You see some speeding vans out there. People sort of know where they are. They put signs up beforehand, oftentimes telling you there's a camera coming. So you're not going to get the solution that way. And if that's the case, I would still say you really need to make these roads self-enforcing. It's a lot more expensive, but that sort of design, to design the streets to get the sort of behaviors that we want is what we're after. Like that should be the fundamental goal. And the cameras is just a Band-Aid. I mean, that's how I feel about it kind of from the overview.
I'm going to disagree with you somewhat. Like, of course, in an ideal world, we're able to reconfigure all of our streets. Realistically, that's not going to happen in our lifetime. Like, we have too many terrible arterials in too many urban areas. We know that speed cameras do reduce speeding. There's been a lot of studies showing that they reliably reduce it. And where I disagree with you, Wes, specifically, is you're saying like you'd have to put cameras everywhere in the city. I actually don't think that's the case to have a major impact on speeding, particularly if we abandon what I think is sort of a dumb status quo practice, which is we announce to everyone, hey, there's a camera at this intersection. Why do we do that? Why don't we move cameras around? Why don't we restrict Google and other companies from letting you know where exactly the cameras are? If you don't know where the cameras are, you're going to obey the traffic rules more, I would say. And this idea of full transparency in camera location, which cities seem to subscribe to, I think is a little weird and baseless. But if you basically, my point is that if people don't know where the cameras are, you could dramatically, even universally reduce speeding with just a very, very limited deployment. So I do think cameras are probably, I think they're more immediate and practical way to reduce speeding. But Judy, I'll just say I'm glad that you and your friend are having this debate because it's very constructive.
Yeah. In Denver, like when you have the van type cameras that are moving around, you don't often see those if you're looking at Waze or something. But they are required by law to put up this like big blue sign to tell the drivers that there is a camera ahead of time.
Right. Right. I don't get it. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think we should. Never made sense.
The other thing is those aren't real tickets. It's like it's like a fine of $75 or something, and it doesn't go on your driver's license. It doesn't affect your insurance. But the problem is, if we did make them real tickets, I think we'd start opening a can of worms of people driving without license plates and all that sort of stuff. I mean, that is a whole nother issue that kind of comes with it in a way that wouldn't if we could design these streets better.
Let's pause there. I think it's time for rail drinks.
All right.
And can I just say that I realized when I was traveling in Europe and all these places that we've created some really dangerous incentives with rail drinks on our podcast, Wes, because I'm in Portugal, I'm in the Czech Republic, I'm in Spain, and I'm like, ooh, that's a really interesting, obscure liquor that I should totally get and then, bring back to show off on the podcast. I brought back a lot of alcohol from Europe, probably more than I would have had we not been doing this podcast.
I did not bring back any, but I will say I ran into people that apparently listened to the podcast because they'd walk up to me and be like, I heard you like whiskey, and they'd hand me a whiskey.
Well, that's useful. No one's offering me like weird Czech liquors. Maybe I should say I like more normal alcohol, so if I'm in a bar, it's easier for them to offer me drinks. But
it's nice, but I don't always want a whiskey.
There is that. Well, I am drinking something I'm very excited about today. So this I've been looking forward to this. I got really so in Spain and Catalonia, everybody cool drinks vermouth. Did you know this?
I
Yeah,
did
no,
not
that
know
was
this.
the face you're making is what I thought. There's white vermouth and there's red vermouth, and and I was like, this is strange, but I'm curious. So I got a glass. I tried it. I got a glass of red vermouth. And they always have it with a green olive and an orange slice, and it was freaking delicious. It was just wonderful. So I brought a bottle home, and I've got it here with my with the orange and the olive, and I'm actually very excited to drink it. You're giving me an excuse to have a beverage that I discovered I loved when I was over in Catalonia.
Well, then it sounds like you have a good problem there. What I have is a friend bought me this. It's not fancy. It is the Costco single barrel scotch.
It's a Kirkland single malt.
Yep. It apparently gets good reviews.
Where is it from? Scotland?
It says Scotch on it, so I assume it's from Scotland, Aberdeen, Scotland.
That's hilarious. Kirkland Scotch. God bless.
Aged 16 years,
Amazing.
Highland single malt Scotch whiskey. And a friend of mine gave it to me. I was with some buddies the other night, and they actually have it, but I didn't get a chance to. So I put a little bit in a beaker here to try.
That is fantastic. That is the first funny drink that we have had on Rail Drinks. So here, cheers, Wes. Cheers. Good to see you again. Well, that was delicious and a lovely way to close out the podcast as always, because we're recording in the evening as we like to do, which is why we end with a beverage.
I will say this is not bad. So if you are at Costco and you see
if you're at Costco, pick up some scotch. Go along with your, giant turkey or whatever it is for Thanksgiving you're getting.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So when will we be back?
We're going to be live November 20th at 5 p.m. What day of the week is November 20th?
That's Thursday. And that's
Thursday.
Next week.
It's next week. It's coming right up. Maybe I'll get to my roundabout topic that I got cut from today, but please do join us. They'll be on YouTube. We'll be sharing on Blue Sky and on LinkedIn the link to join. But it's on YouTube. If you look both ways YouTube, it'll pop right up. Feel free to always send us questions or give us feedback. You can just message us at lookbothwayspod@gmail.com. Feel free to contact me through my website, davidzipper.com. I have a free newsletter there. And Wes, you have a newsletter of sorts, I suppose.
I do.
Kind of. All right.
Yeah, kind of.
But we're not even going to share your info because people can find it if they really want to. Yep. And that's that. But we will be distributing the podcast via lots of listening platforms. We always are grateful if people leave a rating because that's how people can discover it. Maybe just tell a friend. We've been delighted to see more and more people seem to be listening with every episode, and hopefully that continues. But with that, Wes, I'll see you in just over a week. Looking forward to the next session.
And I promise not to talk too much about Back to the Future next time.
Yeah, well, I guess time will tell.
All right.
See you soon. Bye-bye.